Welcome in to the All Utah Hockey Podcast. I'm PD, along with Craig Morgan, as always. And as every once in a while, Belle Fraser's here from the Salt Lake City Tribune. Everybody welcome into this. I don't even know what day of the week it is anymore. It's either a game day now, a travel day, or an off day, and today is a game day. So welcome into the show, everybody.
How you feeling, Petey? You're running ragged lately, huh?
I'm running a little ragged. I'm getting a little, I can feel it today, a little sore throat. So I'm going to battle through today and try to do my best to get through today's show. But I'll be sitting on the couch here in a couple hours watching this all Utah. I get confused with the name of the show with the Utah Hockey Club. But by the way, it's funny listening to people try to figure out what to call this team. And I wish, I appreciate Ryan Smith getting everything done. I appreciate it getting the buildings up as quickly as he did, and the uniforms, and all of those things are true. Just wish they would have finished off and named the team. Just would have made it so much easier for everybody. Belle, how are you doing today?
I'm good. I was going to say it's another challenge figuring out how to write it in an article without saying Utah every sentence. You're like the hockey club and then Utah and then Utah HC.
Yeah. Tough. You want to say something like you want to, like, it's going to be Yeti though, isn't it? We'll talk about that on another show, but I think ultimately it's going to be the Yeti, but Clayton Keller kind of teased that. First off, Belle, you're just getting back to the Salt Lake metro area. You were on the road with the team. How has this team been on the road so far? And I don't mean on the ice, but what are you seeing away from the ice as far as this team finally getting an opportunity to bond on the road?
Yeah, we talked to them, their first day in Long Island and in New York too. Logan Cooley was kind of saying that it's great when a road trip comes this early in the season because you're kind of forced into team bonding. On the plane, he was saying his buddies Dylan Guenther, they're keeping that tradition on this year. But they're staying in the hotel together. They're doing team dinners. They went to NHL Network. They went to the NHL offices. So, they're doing a lot of different off-ice activities to get the name, the brand out there, but also obviously the guys are with each other every day. And I think when you stack that on top of two gritty overtime wins and you learn from a shutout loss, it's kind of the battle test you want a team to face early in the season. And the road trip's not done yet. They're in Anaheim tonight, but the 3-game East Coast stretch was, if you 4 out of 6 points against that caliber of competition, I think that team's pretty happy. They said it after every single game, win or loss, a lot to improve from. So I think you take the wins and you learn from the loss and you just get excited to be back at Delta Center on Saturday, I believe, against the Bruins.
I'm going to say,
yeah,
go ahead, Pete.
I was just going to toss to you and give your initial thoughts so far on this road trip that we saw this coming, right? Like they're going to go win in Madison Square Garden. I'm pretty sure it was Craig that predicted that.
MSG actually doesn't surprise me because they've had some good performances there, but winning against the Islanders, that one I didn't see coming because usually those are just like, as Matty McConnell likes to call them, root canals. Usually when they play the Islanders are like 1-0 games and they're just dull defensive battles with no opportunities. They played really exciting hockey in that game, so good for them. But my takeaway from this road trip, Petey, is some things never change because they played 3 games in the New York metro area. And of course, they're capping the 4-game road trip in Anaheim.
Yeah, in Anaheim. Well, it's a natural fit, right? Let's make that trip across country, 3 time zones, and let's play the Ducks. However, it's a real first close look at those brilliant orange uniforms. Can't wait, actually.
You like those?
You like those? They're horrific. They're awful. Yeah, it's terrible. It's like a Pee-wee team.
See?
Do you really? Well,
I do.
Like a Pee-wee team.
Another reminder, Petey, that you and I are not the demographic.
Yeah. It turns out that they're not asking 50-year-old men what they think of their new uniform choices. No,
they don't care.
Surprise. Well, Craig, one surprise, Craig, that we've seen that not accustomed to with this franchise, although it's a brand new franchise, is their ability to score goals. And you go into Madison Square Garden and score 6 goals. What the heck's going on with the offensive output from this Utah club?
Well, we got to turn to Belle for that because she was on the ground. I mean, we see the stats, but she saw it develop. She saw all the details behind it.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say 6 goals on Igor Shesterkin nonetheless, one of the best goalies in the league. And I think that says a lot. And 16 goals through 3 games, that they were leading the league before, they got shut out. It was funny. I wrote an article the morning of the Devils game. I was like, can they keep it up? And nope, they got shut out. But I think you're really seeing, we talked about it before the season, just the forward depth. And when they moved Maccelli down to the 4th line, we can talk about that if that's the right move for his development. But coach said he liked having Doan on the wing, so they moved Kerfoot up to the 3rd line to center him and Krause. And they have a scoring threat on all 4 lines, and they're able to roll all 4 lines. And the Rangers went down to 3 lines in that game. So I think you see that really coming through to be a strength. And then the top 6 production has been, everything you want it to be and more. I think before the Devils game, 24 cumulative points came from the top 6 in 3 games when you're counting goals and assists. So, I mean, if obviously teams have growing pains in the beginning of the season, you can't take too much from, but for all of those guys to have the consistency that they have shown through the beginning, I think just is a great sign. And, Clayton Keller, 3 goals, 3 assists. Logan Cooley hasn't scored yet, but he has 5 assists. And then, of course, we're going to talk about Dylan Guenther, 5 goals in 3 games, first star of the NHL this week. Those young guns who were given the responsibility to carry this team offensively this year have stepped up to the plate. And Barrett Hayton, too, he injured last year, could not find consistency. He got back in the lineup, but his scoring touch wasn't really there. And he's been one of their more consistent players and playing like the number 1 center that they need him to be. So I think you can be really happy with what you're seeing up front. But on the back end, they also gave up 14 goals against in their first 4 games. So they're scoring a lot, but they need to tighten up defensively. Coach said that. And then you lose Sean Durzi, and that doesn't help, confidence on the blue line. So they've got a lot of pieces going well right now, but definitely a lot to kind of tighten up too.
Let's talk about a couple of those positive pieces. I don't even honestly know what else to say about Dylan Guenther other than what are the odds on him winning the Rocket Richard Trophy, by the way? Has anybody looked? I doubt he even had part of the season, but wow.
Pump the brakes, Greg Morgan.
Pure goal scorer. Go ahead, Petey.
No, and here's the thing. And I know this is the All Utah Hockey Podcast, but as we know, I can come here and bring a little bit of a different perspective on this. Offensive output is great. Schmaltz doesn't have a goal. Doan doesn't have a goal. You just mentioned Cooley doesn't have a. Well, who did I miss then? Cooley, McBain. I'm concerned that it's Hayton, Keller, and Guenther. I want to see some secondary scoring, and I really want to see it tonight. I think their best players have been their best players, and the player that has surprised me the most, and I had a chance to talk about him the other day on a short that I made, was Nick Schmaltz, and he's a guy that I'm incredibly hard on. I have problems with his consistency and his playing a 200-foot game and his ability to play night in and night out. He's been fantastic. And he is really dug in, and I don't know if it's the change of scenery in Utah. I don't know if it's if he's just excited to be healthy for the first time in a long time. I'm not sure what it is, but he's been outstanding. And I know that line has been good, but I started to watch him closely over this road trip, and I think what the biggest difference is Barrett Hayton is helping those 2 guys play better. And watch Barrett Hayton tonight. I want everybody to tune into number 27, and when that line is on the ice, watch where he is. And Barrett Hayton's going to be right in front of the goal, and he's going to be pulling defense, and he's going to be pulling forwards in to cover him, which gives number 8 and 9 so much more room to operate up top. So I really think Hayton, unsung hero on that line, giving 8 and 9 more room. So that's everybody's assignment tonight. Keep an eye on Barrett Hayton in front of the net.
Craig? I want to ask Mel about that because I tweeted this the other day, and we've been waiting for this evolution, wondering if it was actually going to happen. John Chaika spent that number 5 overall pick on him way back when, and he was criticized at the time. He was criticized roundly afterward when Barrett Hayton failed to live up to anything close to that draft status. I've always said, Petey, you and I have both been saying this team is still deficient up the middle. They don't have what they need up the middle. Well, if Barrett Hayton becomes a legitimate top 6 center, my gosh, does that change the entire complexion of this team? I'm curious what you've seen in all the different pieces of Barrett Hayton's game. I'm hearing great things about him, but you were boots on the ground, Belle.
Yeah, I think an interesting note about Barrett Hayton that coach said, and he said this could be the case, it could not be, but it was just from his perspective. He said he puts more pressure on himself than anyone else. He's extremely competitive. And for the past few years, he's been playing on 1-year deals. And he thinks that that could have been a weight on his shoulder. You know, he signs a multi-year deal this offseason with the team. And he thinks that that has maybe given him some room to feel more secure in just, you know, his position with the team, and has allowed him, and being healthy too, to just completely commit to being that number one center. And he talked a lot about working really hard to get to the inside ice. And I feel like that has been a really big term for this team in the first week. They want to get the greasy goals. They want to get the dirty goals. They want to fight in front of the crease. And that's something that Barrett Hayton has been extremely good at. 2 of his goals are tipping goals. And then 1 goal was he was on the rush, crashed the net, and he scored in tight. So I think that's the type of player that he is when he's having his most success. And that's what he's kind of been true to. And I think you see it too. Coach said it. He looks more mature. He looks comfortable. He looks confident. And I think once a player starts believing in themselves and it's supplemented and complemented with points on the board, you know, you can say you had a good game and feel good about the things you did away from the score sheet. But I think it does go a long way for him to see that he is contributing and he's scoring and he has assists and he's making his line mates better. So I think that mixed with just maybe the stability contractually and in Utah, you're seeing consistency from him. And, you know, that'll need to stick. It's hard to make blanket statements when we're 4 games into the season, but that's exactly the start you want Hayton to have for this team.
Yeah, and I look at the forward group too, Belle, and we talked about depth in this forward group, and we said it before the season started that we weren't sure who the second line, third line, fourth line, and now especially with Maccelli playing lower in the lineup, Carcone playing lower in the lineup, you do have the ability to score up and down this lineup. Clearly, again, we know what the top line is, but that brings us down to the fourth line, and you're talking about a guy who was one of the best players in training camp all season, signs on the last possible day, and going to bring a little bit of consistency and some secondary scoring, and some guy that's an experienced NHLer in Kailer Yamamoto, and still haven't seen him in the lineup. Do you think that day is getting closer, that we're going to see Yamamoto step in and get an opportunity to play?
It's interesting because when O'Brien went in for Carcone, we asked Coach, you know, is it matchup based? Why O'Brien tonight, Carcone last night? And he said, maybe it's matchup based, but he thought they would both play well against Jersey's bottom 6. He said it's more that they're trying to instill a rotation. And we asked, do you see Yamamoto being part of that rotation? Because, you know, he is the only forward who hasn't gotten a game, and he's in that group of players that would rotate into that bottom 6 role. And he said, you know, he's not in it right now. It doesn't mean he won't ever be in it. He said, you know, O'Brien and Carcone kind of earned their stripes with this team last year and have done well when they're called upon this year. So I think they're waiting for that time for Yamamoto. It doesn't, I mean, Carcone's back in tonight, it looks like, and O'Brien played last game, so it doesn't look like he's in the rotation yet. But I also think that's not a guy you sign if you're not going to utilize him. I talked to Yamamoto this week about his experience on the PTO and his conversation with Bill Armstrong when he finally, you know, got the weight lifted off his shoulders and knew he had an NHL contract. And Bill Armstrong said they liked his versatility. They liked, you know, he's hard-nosed, and despite his size, he's in every scrum after the whistle. He battles for net front positioning, and he has the goal scorer touch too. You know, there's not a lot of guys who can be kind of ratty like that, but also have that flair when it comes to goal scoring. So I think he's going to be utilized, but at the same time, Carcone, he goes in every game. He has speed. He also has the scoring flair. So it's not like if you don't play Yamamoto, you're not getting that. And then O'Brien, granted, we know we've talked about maybe the lapses in his game, but that's a unique guy in that lineup that brings a different fire that Yamamoto doesn't bring. So I think he's a good player. If he gets in, you know, he's not going to make the team worse, but it's not like Carcone and O'Brien aren't making the team better either. So it really is just a numbers game. I'm sure if Yamamoto was part of the 12 forwards and they're only carrying 12 forwards, it would be fine. But yeah, it seems like it's going to be a rotation, and he just hasn't cracked it yet.
Yeah, got to believe he's going to get in on that homestand. You can't have a guy sitting too long. Otherwise, you know, you can't expect him to look sharp when he's in the lineup. That is an interesting situation. PD, I don't know where you want to go next, but as long as we're looking at the bottom of the lineup, if you don't mind just jumping to Matthias Maccelli at this point, I wanted to talk about that one, because that to me, To me, that's a statement from Andre Tourigny that Matias Maccelli hasn't shown up. I don't think they're happy with his game right now. I think he looks passive when he's playing. He's not moving his feet. I don't think he's engaged either way, either side of the puck right now. So I feel like this is a message to Matias Maccelli that he needs to step up his game, which is a little bit surprising, honestly.
Yeah, it's funny because when you look at what Matias Maccelli did a year ago and his ability to play with Lawson Krause, we talked about that on every show, the tandems and the pairs on each line. And it was Krause and Maccelli. And it didn't matter who you threw between them. It was McBain, if it was Bukestad, it didn't matter who was in the middle. Those two just had that chemistry. And there was something about Maccelli's game this year that he just looked slower. He just didn't have that jump or his pace in his game that we saw from a year ago. And I think you're seeing it early in this season. Now he did have an unbelievable play on this trip where he sauced it over a few sticks and gets a great assist. Yeah. He still got that in his game, and it's still there. But I think you're right. I think this is message sending. It does two things. One, it sends a message to a kid that, hey, you had a great year last year, but this is a new year and you have to do it again. We have a deep lineup and we have the ability to put you down there. And secondly, to Belle's point, this just gives depth to a fourth line now that can really be a scoring threat, especially when you talk about when it's Carcone, Maccelli, and Stenlund. That's a really good fourth line. And you're seeing fourth lines in the National Hockey League are no longer, maybe no offense to Ryan Reeves, but it's no longer Ryan Reeves. It's guys that can skate and guys that can play and guys that can get on the forecheck and guys that can contribute to offense with a spark. And I think that you're going to find chemistry on that fourth line with Maccelli down there. Now, ultimately, these lines are all going to get screwed up because number 17 is working really hard. Nick Bukestad's back in Salt Lake City getting ready to play. And when he comes back, something's going to budge because Nick is going to bring something different than they have in the lineup, and that's a two-way centerman that can play all over the ice, kill penalties, all of those things. Then it's going to be interesting. I think you're going to see a lot of jumbling up until that point, but I do think when he comes back, something's going to have to give.
I think also quickly with Maccelli, like you said, it's kind of like you're waiting for Bukestad to come back and you see how it shuffled. So this is his opportunity now to show that no matter who's healthy, that he needs an important role and he can produce on this team. And he hasn't done that so far. But I think it is a mental battle for him to a certain extent. I talked to him during training camp just about what the coaching staff expects of him this season, what they want his role to be. And they said we talked about this. They want him to shoot a lot more than he did last year. And he said to him, he sees himself as a playmaker. He's a pass first type of guy. And he said it's kind of a mental flip. He has to switch. He has to flip to kind of get himself when he has the puck to think, shoot, don't look for a line mate, So I think not that he's remodeling his game completely in any sense because he is a goal scorer. He has that shot. But I think maybe when he's on the ice, he's thinking a little bit too much and overthinking what he needs to do instead of kind of just being the guy that we saw last season. But I think that's going to be an interesting development because when you look at the group and Guenther's gotten off to a good start, we talked about all the young guys that this team needs to carry its weight to be good in the long stretch, to play important games at the end of the season. That's a guy they're going to need to get going and not in a bottom six role too,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that before we get on to the next segment here, I do want to just kind of wrap up this top thing about how well this team is playing on this very difficult road trip. I do think the pressure of getting out of Salt Lake really helped them. I think there was so much hype and so much going on in that home opener. It was almost exhausting. There was just so much around it. And I think it was really important. The timing was right for them to get out and be able to bond and be able to get away from family. Sorry. And dogs. Sorry. Butter pig that you had to sit home alone. But those things make a difference. And I did think it was important for this team to bond. And I think it showed in their play. And I do think they surprised some people. I don't think this Utah Hockey Club is going to surprise people for long. I think they're starting to see, my goodness, they're very young, they're very fast, and this is a very deep team. So I think as this season goes on, you're really going to see the battles are going to be there because people are not going to take this Utah team lightly. But we're going to get to more of that on the other side of this break. But first, we're going to talk about FOCO. FOCO is a leading manufacturer of sports and entertainment merchandise with a product line that includes apparel, accessories, toys, collectibles, novelty items, and so much more. They're best officially licensed gear for all sports and fandoms, whether it's hoodies, jackets, beachwear, or even, I got to say it again, Craig, your favorite, overalls. Craig puts the fun in FOCO. I don't know. I like that. It was a new line. Craig puts the fun. There's no fun there. There's something for fans of almost every occasion. Get all your Utah Jazz and Utah Utes collectibles and merch there. And guess what? The very first official Utah Hockey Club merch is now there. You can go on Foco.com and pre-order. You can pre-order the Dylan Guenther first goal in franchise history bobblehead.
Wow.
Foco always has our backs for sports. Now they have yours too. Get the best gear around by visiting Foco.com and using the code ALLCITY10 for all non-presale items. Use the promo code ALLCITY10 for 10% off. And then Rugged Road. Rugged Road is dedicated to creating durable outdoor gear for adventurers who demand the best, whether you're in land or water. Rugged Road gear is built to accompany you on every adventure. Rugged Road coolers are designed to be always float upright so you never lose a drink. Rugged Road coolers are incredibly light, making them easy to transport for any trip. The coolers are guaranteed to keep your contents cold for up to 7 days. Great for everything from fishing, tubing, camping, and Craig and I's favorite, tailgating. These coolers are designed to meet the needs of every outdoor sports enthusiast. So make sure you gear up for your next adventure with Rugged Road coolers. Reliable, durable, and built to be used. Rugged Road is your ultimate outdoor companion. Head to ruggedroadoutdoors.com and use the code ALLCITY for 10% off. Well, Craig, it's more hockey talk, and we've talked about the forwards a lot too. We've got to talk about what's going on in the back end. Sean Durzi, I think Sean Durzi has been outstanding to start this year. I think he's moving the puck incredibly well. I think he's defending well, and I think it's all attributed to his ability to skate and get up and down the ice. He's hurt and out of the lineup. We're waiting for John Marino to come back and see what he can add for this team defensively and on the penalty kill. Now, they're looking at some injuries on the back end. So let's talk about it. Belle, thoughts on how and what they're going to do on the back end next?
I mean, first, what a loss in Sean Durzi. I mean, not that you want anyone to get hurt ever on either team, but if you could choose a guy to go without for Utah, it's Sean Durzi's last on that list, it feels like. And the back end, the blue line, the decor has been the biggest topic of conversation coming to the offseason. It's the area that the team paid most attention to, that they bolstered, bringing in Sergachev and Cole and Bortuzzo and giving Durzi room to not bear all the weight. And here he is, and now that's kind of being put on Sergachev now. And you see they're putting Kesslering up with Sergachev tonight, and Bortuzzo's coming in for his first game with Utah. He's going to be on the third pair. He was scratched the previous nights, and Valimaki's going to be with Cole for now, and then Bortuzzo with Kolechanik. But it's a thin back end, you know. I think what excited the team and what made them feel confident about their defense going into it was that it was a balance of guys with experience and younger guys that still needed room to grow and needed veterans or someone like Sergachev to play with. And now it's kind of not that balance anymore when you take Durzi out of it and Marino's not back. But Coach talked about it today. Bortuzzo talked about it today. They said everyone on the blue line is just going to have to play better for a longer period of time. They're going to have to play to the best of their abilities for probably 2 to 5 more minutes of a game and be more consistent. And, you know, no one's going to replace Sean Durzi, especially with who they have. They called up Koch from the AHL, and there's no one in that group who can replicate the two-way game that Durzi plays, especially his offensive abilities, power play, PK. But Coach said everyone just needs to play like themselves and do it a bit better. And Bortuzzo was saying they believe in that group, and luckily they have the veteran leadership in there in Cole, in Bortuzzo, and Sergachev 2 Stanley Cups to know that when guys go down, it's the next man up mentality, and you have to dig deep. And I think it's an early test for this team, and you know, you never want a guy like Durzi to get hurt, but maybe it's better it comes at the beginning of the season. You know, who knows if we're at game 60 right now and they're making a push and you lose Durzi. So we don't know how long he's going to be out for. Bill Armstrong yesterday on the radio said foreseeable future, which isn't promising.
Not a great sign, Belle.
No, not at all.
He left the game in a sling as well, which wasn't a great sign either. But that's about all the information we have now. Coach said he saw the doctor today, see the doctor tomorrow. I imagine when they get back to Salt Lake tomorrow, we'll have a bit more information. But, you know, a call up from the AHL is never promising when you think about long-term injury for Durzi.
Speaking of that call up, I know Andre liked his game in the preseason and in camp, but he seems like the type of call up that you bring up when you don't want to bring a young guy and just sit him. You want those young guys developing. You want those guys playing. But before we even talk about him, I think we should find out how his name is actually
Yeah,
pronounced, don't you?
I was before we do it, because I know when Craig, by the way, Belle, I don't know how well you know
Bill
Craig.
knows. She knows. I sent it to her.
I got the voice memo today.
He can be a pain in the rear because when it comes to spelling European names or pronouncing European names, absolute stickler. I'm not a writer, and I'll prove that in every tweet. I don't spell, I can't write. Punctuation's not my forte, as you two obviously can handle that part. I don't know what you call those things, the little dots that go over letters and lines and accents.
Sometimes
I don't know what they're called.
Sometimes they're actual letters. So go ahead.
I have never used them, and I won't use them because I don't know how to use them. But Craig is an absolute stickler for it. And when it comes to pronunciations, he always turns to the expert. So, Craig?
Yeah, we have one in every country, actually.
Yes.
When it comes to Czech and Slovak names, we turn to our old friend, Radim Verbata, of course, former Coyote, former many other teams as well. Verby's always happy to join us and tell us how to pronounce names correctly. So, Emma, I believe we have that audio file of the recently recalled defenseman from the Tucson Roadrunners.
Patrick Koch.
So I expect everyone to say it like that from now on.
Patrick Koch.
I'm just going to avoid talking about him.
Yeah, you probably will be able to do that, Belle. No.
Here's where I always go when the names are too difficult. Just use the initials. Call him PK.
PK, I like that. And I unfortunately for him, Belle, I don't think you're gonna have to worry about it too much.
Yeah, probably not.
Barring further injuries, and honestly, like you said, Belle, if there's an injury where it's going to involve a player playing every night, I'm not sure this is going to be the guy. We'll see. I mean, it's one quick trip. It's a game, one game in Anaheim tonight before they go home. They can make adjustments real quickly before they get back home on Saturday. But that brings up another point, though, is their ability to defend. And this team is scoring. And you talk about their game in New York. Hey, let's be honest. Like Shesterkin's not giving up 6 every night. Like that's not going to happen. I don't care if he's playing against Dylan Guenther or not. The concern goes back to something that this has been a concern for Andre Tourigny teams for a while, is their ability to defend. So where do you think we're at with this team and what they're giving up? Because I tell you this, Ingram's been outstanding. Ingram's been lights out. And even Vmelka in his one start, Veggie was very, very good in his start too. So the goaltending's been solid, but they're still middle in the pack in goals against. And it's not because of the goaltending.
No, and this is something I wrote about this week, that it's great when you're scoring 5+ goals a night, but you can't rely on that on a nightly basis in the NHL. Teams are too good, and especially if you're going to take 7 penalties a game like they did against New Jersey, when you spend 14 minutes of a 60-minute game on the penalty kill, that takes away 14 minutes on 5-on-5 time and where you're getting most of your goals from. So I think when you mix that, they're indiscipline on penalties with, not that they're going to stop scoring. I think getting shut out is a normal thing for NHL teams. It's okay. No one click the panic button, but it proved that, when you let in 3 goals and maybe your top 6 or the forwards aren't going that night, it's like, well, maybe we should have focused a little bit more on defense. And I think it was definitely hard in that Jersey game because Durzi goes down in the second period and they're left playing with 5 defensemen, a lot of them on their offside. And coach kind of said when Durzi left, we were already slipping. We were already sliding down in that game. And that kind of was the final blow. But yeah, I think you look at, I'm referring to the Jersey game just because that was, I think, their worst performance of the trip, but just the way they played in the neutral zone, they weren't commanding it the way they did against the Islanders and the Rangers. Back check slower too, and that could just be, worn out from 2 overtime games. But I think you see a team that's still young and still improving and has young players like Kessler and Valimaki and Kolyachonok that get caught behind and get caught chasing the play. And that's just what it's going to be. And not to say that they're the reason and they haven't played well, because they have, but that's just what happens when you have a team in the 4th year of a rebuild. And Bill Armstrong warned this before the season started to temper expectations, that some night we're going to look like the best team in the league, and some night you're going to say, boy, are they young and inexperienced. And I think you're just seeing the back end kind of figure out how to mesh their new additions with the guys that are still growing into roles. So I think that when we look at all the positions, like you said, goaltending is completely solid. That's a part where they're going to have to develop and grow the most this season. And that doesn't happen in 3 to 4 games. And now they have one of their biggest tests of the year, in the 5th game.
Fortunately, well, yeah, I'm not sure how good the Ducks are, but yeah, they're exhausted, right? I mean, this is a tough road trip. It's always tough to come across country and then have to play another game. I also worry, I know we talked a little off the air about this with Cole and Bortuzzo in the lineup. You're not exactly fleet of foot on the back end, so that's a concern against a quicker team like Anaheim that has some skilled forwards, at least some guys who can do damage.
Yeah, I mean, face it, Craig. This league is speed now. The league is speed. Yeah. Everybody's fast. Like this, this is no longer, hey, that's a big, heavy team. If they're a big, heavy team, they're a big, heavy, fast team. That's just the nature of the game. And that's why you don't, no offense to Bortuzzo, kid can play. But you're seeing less of that defenseman and more of the 6 foot tall guy that can scoot up and down the ice. I think that's the prototypical defenseman now. So does this give them some strength and a bigger back end? Yeah, I think it does. And I know GM Bill Armstrong wants to have that. He likes the size on the back, and he likes to be able to defend that net front. The concern I've always had, and I'm going to say it, and Belle's going to get sick of me saying it. I don't mind big defensemen. I don't mind big defensemen in front of the net, protecting the net front in front of your goalie. I don't like big defensemen that can't skate, trying to play in a system that relies on defensemen skating, like Andre Tournier's system does, where they chase the puck. And I think that the problem you get with defensemen like Ian Cole and Robert Bortuzzo is you get guys that can't skate trying to play a system that chases the puck. What's going to happen when you do that is you end up leaving the net front unprotected, and then you're leaving your goalie out to dry. That's my concern. Always has been. If you get slower defensemen, you have to adjust your system to the defensemen you have. So now, hey, guess what?
Fortunately, they don't have those guys in the system, right? That's not the kind of guy they drafted. They drafted big mobile guys. But in the interim, before those guys are ready, I agree with you. That's a concern, especially when you have to have a couple of these guys in the lineup when you have injuries.
And Belle brought it up, the penalties. The penalties, too. Huge problem. It's all the back end guys, and it's all stick fouls. Slashing, hooking, tripping. Hey, you want to cross, no offense, I'm going to get people in the league call me. You want to cross-check a guy in front of the net to let them know, hey, you're not coming here again? Fine. Like I think that sets a tone. I think it can set a tone for the game. I see Krause has a roughing penalty. That's fine. I'm not fine. Sorry for kids at home. Yeah, it's not fine, but you can live with those penalties where you're protecting a teammate or you're being tough. It's those stick fouls that you just got to get away from because you're not fast enough to keep up with the players surrounding. So I do get concerned because most of those penalties have been by defensemen, Belle.
Yeah, and not only defensemen, but Ian Cole in particular. And I think, and we haven't seen Bortuzzo in game action yet, but he is a similar veteran. He'll block a shot. He's physical, he's big, but it is true. They're one of the faster teams in the league, and it's hard to put those guys in there and just be like, keep up, because they're in their 15th and 16th seasons in the NHL, and they have mileage on them. And I think with Ian Cole, he's done what he's had to do on the PK. He's been, the meat and potatoes defenseman that he's branded as, but like both of you said, he's been caught behind the plate a lot simply because he cannot keep up, and that has been a really big source of penalties, and poorly timed penalties too. He took one in the first minute of a third period when they were up by 1 goal, I believe, against the Rangers. And that's, historically one of the better power plays in the league. You don't want to give them a power play to tie the game on home ice in their home opener. And, they came out with the win, but nonetheless, it's hooking, it's tripping. It's him trying to catch the guy he was covering because he was not skating fast enough and he got lost. So I think it's just something that you can't really change. Like Ian Cole is not suddenly going to become a super quick player this year, but it's just something to think about. And I think that's something Coach thinks about when he has, his full healthy D-core back, is who do you pair those guys with? You saw it tonight. He's not going to put Cole and Bortuzzo both on the third pair. He split them up with younger, faster players. But I think that's just going to be a balance and discipline. Just let the guy beat you and have faith in Connor Ingram instead of putting your team down again, So, and it's all kinks in the beginning of the season. It'll get ironed out, but the penalties have been bad and really inexcusable. I think you really saw it kind of just let loose in New Jersey, whether they were tired or frustrated. But, it's not winning hockey. It's not how you win in this league.
Well, two things, Belle, before we leave penalties. Two things. Good news. The Anaheim Ducks have not scored a power play goal yet this season. So they are technically 32nd.
Four tonight.
Wow.
Yeah. So they are currently last. They do not have a power play goal going against a team that takes more penalties than any other team in the National Hockey League. And second, Belle got her first experience, Greg. Her first experience of an Andre Tourigny coach team taking a too many men on the ice penalty. It's the first one of the year. Boy, Belle, get used to it, because they led the league a year ago when they were the Arizona Hockey Club, and now in Utah they've taken another one. So keep your eyes open for that. You've been initiated into the too many men on the ice penalties. Last player we want to talk about with Belle, and we'll let her go get ready for tonight's game. We want to talk about Josh Doan, a guy that we sat on this show and said, gosh, he's a guy that might end up playing down in Tucson. But to start the season, and there wasn't enough spot, and Yamamoto's in and Doan's out, but yet he's been not just in the lineup, he's been an integral part of what's going on in the lineup. Your thoughts, what you've seen from number 91 so far?
Yeah, I mean, I think his goal at UBS against the Islanders to tie it 4-4 after the Islanders had just gone up, and you're kind of like, oh man, like old patterns, give up a goal late in the third, and you're kind of going to throw away 2 points after you played a pretty good game. And then Josh Doan, I mean, the goal itself was great. You see his power for a 22-year-old on the puck, the way he can defend the puck and kind of just work his way through guys while on the rush or fighting just for net front positioning or getting in passing lanes and shooting lanes. That has really stuck out to me, just how powerful he looks for someone who has only played, 14 NHL games, 15 NHL games. But I think that was kind of just a culmination of how hard he's been working throughout the first few games. He said coming into the season that he wants to be good in all three zones. He wants to be trusted in every single situation. And coach put that line out there with a minute or two left in the third against the Islanders, trying to force overtime, and he delivered. So I think, what more can you do to show a team that you can be out there in the dire situations than force a game to overtime and ultimately win it? So, and I think too, he's been on that third line. He started as center and then they moved him to the wing. And I think he's looked a bit more comfortable there,
Wow.
able to play a little bit more free and have less of a defensive responsibility. Just for a young guy, center obviously plays a lot more deeper two-way. And I think for him to just focus on setting his teammates up and getting comfortable in the NHL pace and stuff, I think him on the wing allows him to do that better. And he's just having such a good time. You talk to him after practice and after games, and he's just so happy to be in the league and to be making an impact on this team. And he talked about creating his own legacy, and he's doing that so far. He kind of joked, Shane works for the Leafs, and they were in New York and New Jersey because they had kind of coinciding road trips, but they're like, we've randomly already seen each other 2 to 3 times this season, and it's only 4 games in. So I think it's been cool for him to have his family there for the first couple games. But I'm not going to say he looks like a complete pro, but if you're new to hockey and you see Josh Doan out there, you're not thinking it's a rookie season or someone this team can't trust in big moments, and that's exactly what you want him to be. I think that's an exciting sign for Utah hockey fans.
Yeah, and he's got a little more skill than Dad too. Let's just go ahead and say it.
yeah, I won't argue with that one.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll tell his dad.
Before we let you go, I gotta ask because it was a tradition with me. Did you get to stay in Manhattan? And if so, did you sample the pizza? Did you come away with any favorites?
Of course, I'm actually from Manhattan, so I got to.
I didn't know that. Okay.
I was
okay.
for like 6 days. It was funny how it worked out. I did have a couple slices of pizza. I hit all my favorite spots. I mean, John's and Joe's in the Village is like the go-tos.
Joe's
and then
is
I had
unbelievable.
a couple New York bagels. Maybe a few too many. I think I'm set on bagels for the rest of the month. But New York was fun.
Very cool.
It's funny,
well, thank you,
Craig.
for joining us. Go ahead, please.
Belle, I'll say this about Manhattan, because first of all, I didn't know anybody actually was from there, so that's good for me to find that out today. But I've eaten there before, traveled there for 20 years, and I couldn't tell you the name of one restaurant. I just if you are standing on the street and you're hungry, there will be a place to eat. And that's where I eat. So I don't know what the name of it was. I can tell you if it's good or bad, but no idea where I am, what I ate. Too much for me. I'll take a little bit slower
And it'll
pace.
cost you at least $30. I was like so
Yeah.
happy to be back in Utah. I was like, thank God. I can't financially stay in New York for any longer.
Well, Belle,
Man,
thanks
do that.
again for jumping on and joining us and giving us the real insight what's going on behind the curtain. What can we expect to come from you next from the Salt Lake Tribune? What are you writing right now?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately not in Anaheim tonight, but I'll still have coverage of the game from afar. And then team's back tomorrow, so full practice updates, game stories. I'm working on a couple features and kind of like behind the scenes stories, I guess, more of like what the road trip was like compared to last year in Arizona. You know, that was something they really talked about, wanting better flights, better hotels, that type of thing. So look out for that. And also just how they're building culture in a new market, both fans and players. And then, you know, your regular game stories and player features all at the Salt Lake Tribune.
Well, stay tuned to Belle and everything she's writing at the Salt Lake Tribune. And make sure you follow her on Twitter at Belle Fraser 1. That's Belle, Belle. Belle Fraser 1. Belle, thanks again. I'm sure we'll be checking in with you real soon. Appreciate it, because you're a lot more fun to listen to than Craig and I. So thanks, Belle. Have a good night tonight. Appreciate you.
Thank
See you, Belle.
Bye.
Oh, okay, Craig. We still have more to talk about. But I just plugged Belle in her writing. Are you writing anything? Are you writing anything?
Me? I don't write anything.
You are such a floater.
I am.
You barely do. And thank gosh I don't have to write, because I can't.
Oh,
I don't know, like people I've talked to a writer, another writer I know over the last few days. He goes, "Oh, I gotta spit out 1,000 words. It's no big deal. I can do that in my sleep." I'm like, "What?" Like my brain literally does not. I don't do well with letters. I just can't write.
Yeah, no, I'm writing a lot, like for a lot of different places. Obviously, you know this, but for All City, for this Utah beat, I got my first prospect report coming. I think it's going to be on the site tomorrow, and this is an annual thing that I do after talking to Lee Stempniak. I just like to give people an idea of where everyone's going, where everyone is
Right.
playing. Keep track of all these guys. These are all the names that you need to pay attention to. This is where they're playing. So whatever site you want to use, whether it's Elite Prospects, whether it's the team sites, we're going to keep you in touch with the prospects. Again, this is leading off, just giving you an idea where everyone's going to be, but I will be tracking these prospects like I always have. I'll do a prospect report where I dive deeply into 2 or 3 players through the eyes of their coaches. Usually it's through the eyes of the coaches or the development staff. Occasionally I'll talk to the players, but listen, let's be honest. The staff is going to give you much better insights on how they're doing than the players are sometimes, because the players need to learn a lot. So Lee Stempniak, his staff, they do a great job. Anyone following this club should really be paying attention to this development staff. And then as long as we're talking about development staff, don't forget about the Tucson Roadrunners coaching staff, because they play a critical role in the development of these players, especially when they are one step away. Steve Potvin, John Slaney, that entire cast down there, they've done a marvelous job. These guys are critical pieces in the organization, and we'll be keeping you in touch with them.
Yeah, and I think it's important you get to know those names now, because the names that are down in Tucson right now preparing and learning and developing are the guys that are going to be playing here in Utah in the years to come, because there's a lot of really good players down there. And
Especially
I think
on the back end.
you look at the lineup now, look at the everyday players that are there: Guenther, Doan, Maccelli, Carconi, Kraus. You can go that far. And how many people are everyday players that started down in the American League? Craig, it's time to just do a little quick jaunt around the National Hockey League. And we're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to leave the Utah Hockey Club for just a moment. And I want to say one comment. I saw Duncan, Idaho. I like to talk about Duncan, Idaho, because I actually lived in Idaho. So every time I see the Idaho pop up on the screen, I like to say something about Idaho. And he said New Jersey seemed way more prepared for our game. And I will say this. It's the third game of a long trip, and it was a day game. And when you play a day game like that, I think that's a difficult time to be the road team, because your preparation is way off, and it's really hard to get at. You're also looking at a team in the New Jersey Devils that I think is one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference this year. I think they defend well, and I think they've got a lot of young, talented speed. So I wouldn't judge this season at all by their performance in New Jersey. But let's get to the rest of the league, Craig. A game I happened to watch last night, those Edmonton Oilers that everybody
finally
said,
got a
oh,
win.
they're going back to the cup. They're going back to the cup. And I will say it, I got the receipts that said no cup.
Me too.
What's going on in Edmonton? What's going on in Edmonton, Craig?
Well, they're off to another slow start. So, and again, like Belle said when she was here, you can't judge too much off the first few games of a season. We know from having been around this league for a long time that crazy stuff happens in the first 10 to 20 games of a season. It's really not an indication. Bill Armstrong will say it himself. There's a lot of coaches will say it actually, that there are stages of the NHL season, whether it's 10 games, 15 game or 20 game segments, it gets harder and harder and harder as teams dial it in. That's when you find out how the really good teams are. Really, after the All-Star break, we get a really good sense of who the best teams are. But Edmonton is off to another slow start. They did get a win last night in overtime. Before that, I was starting to think, this Connor McDavid guy, he might be overrated because he's really not producing.
Yeah, can't play. Guy can't play. I will say this about the Edmonton Oilers, and it's going to be my Stan Bowman comment of the show. I'm concerned. I'm concerned. This team is the oldest team in the National Hockey League, the oldest. And one of the things I talked about when Belle was here, we both said that now in the last 5 minutes. When Belle was here, she was here like 30 seconds ago. But we talked about how this league is about speed. Edmonton Oilers built on speed. Go watch the finals last year. They are incredibly fast. Unfortunately, they lost some of that speed. And they got older, and they got Skinner in the lineup, and you've got old players in the lineup every night. The top line can blow the doors off anybody. They can. Whether they split them up or put them together, Draisaitl and McDavid can blow the doors off anybody. They can. I don't know if this Edmonton Oilers team is built top to bottom to win. I just don't know. I think they have the best talent in the National Hockey League. They have the best power play. All of those things are true. I just think the West is better right now. I want to say one thing to Jason M. said, if the PHNX crew, we're not the PHNX crew, we're the all Utah hockey crew. But if they ever come to Utah for a game, will you guys do a meetup at a bar like you guys have done in Arizona in the past? Some of us Utahns have become big fans of you guys. Well, the answer is if I make it to Utah, buddy, I will be in a bar. So
here's what I also discovered when I was in Utah.
Yeah.
They can drink because we saw a lot of it.
Did you see the thing? Yeah, they broke a record. More alcohol, more beer sold in that game than any Utah Jazz game ever. Attago hockey fans showing up. So, Jason, the answer is yes and yes. And if it's not a meetup, I will meet you there. We talk about top teams in the Western Conference. One of the other teams in the West that is going to be competing in this Central Division with the Utah Hockey Club is Colorado. Another team. Oh, there's another team. They're going back to the Cup. Another team going back to the Cup. Maybe not. Thoughts?
Well, I mean, they're banged up. They're so banged up right now that I don't want to judge them too harshly. But man, they're giving up goals like I've never seen before. What was it? 20 goals in their first 3 games that they allowed? That's insanity. You can't do that at any point of a season. I don't care who's in your lineup. You can't give up that many goals. Colorado has to defend better. You and I have both talked about concerns about the goaltending. I think this issue runs deeper than just goaltending, but goaltending is a concern in Colorado.
Yeah, and one of the things I'm going to say, because you said this when we were off here too, is you're talking about Colorado's injuries. And really, when you look at Landeskog and Nichushkin, they're done. I mean, they're not part of this team, and they're out. So you're really looking at Lankinen, Terry Lankinen, a great role player, Jonathan Drouin, again, another role player, and Devon Taves. So, like, everybody's got those kind of injuries. So Taves it comes to me.
Yeah.
Oh, no, he is. But just like Durzi's important to Utah, right? And so I look at that team and I go without Landeskog now for I don't know how many years now. I forget the last time he played is when they hoisted the cup. So you go, is the window in Colorado closing? I don't think their goaltending is good enough. I said it last year and everybody told me, oh no, their team's so good. Average goaltending can get us there. No, it can't because you proved it and you're not doing it again this year. So we'll see. I know it's a long season and they still have Nathan McKinnon and he can carry this team on his back by himself. And, Cale Makar can do it as well. So this team will get better. There is no doubt about it. But I do not think this Colorado Avalanche team is the team to beat in the West. I don't. And I don't think Edmonton is either. Let's talk about Dallas.
2 shutouts in 3 games. Yeah, they look good.
That's the team
both of our
liked.
cup picks, right? That's both of our cup picks, isn't it?
If Dallas Stars were healthy, Edmonton's not in the finals. I said it a year ago. I'll say it today. I like the Dallas Stars. I think they're young, they're fast, they're experienced enough with guys like Ben and Sagan that they can get that every kind of way you want to play. Dallas can play that way. They can play it heavy, they can play it fast, and their goaltending when Ottinger is on, he is elite. I like the Dallas Stars.
Vegas is also out of the gate hot. It was interesting, and I get it to an extent, some of the defections, but I still believe in this team. I still think this is a playoff team. I saw some people picking Vegas to miss the playoffs. I don't think that's happening. Yeah, that's crazy to me. But we talked about the importance of hot starts. It's not the be all end all. Obviously, all 82 games matter, but you can bank points, and there's this certain psychology to being ahead rather than having to chase and jump a bunch of teams. I think it helps to get off to a good start in Vegas is there.
Yeah, and it's funny when you talk about Vegas. This is a team I have winning the Pacific Division. I like Vegas a lot. I don't know why everybody's saying they can't. Well, you've got Hurdle's healthy, Stone's healthy. I think Hill's going to get back to where he played when they won the Stanley Cup. I like Vegas. I'll take Vegas over Edmonton in a 7-game series all day long. I think their 6 defensemen are better. I don't know where the pundits are. We pundits, by the way? I don't think I use that word in a sentence. Pundit. Yeah, I like it. But I don't know where they've got some negative on this team. So I think Vegas is off to a hot start. And this goes back to the point, Craig. All of the teams we just mentioned in the West, Colorado, Edmonton, Vegas, Dallas, are teams that the Utah Hockey Club has yet to play. And what they played in the Western Conference so far, they played Chicago on opening night.
They stink.
Chicago stinks. And tonight they're playing the Anaheim Ducks. They stink too. So you're looking at 2 teams that so they don't have that comparable. The best team they played is the New Jersey Devils. They are, and I think the Rangers are another team that can potentially be in the Stanley Cup Finals. I want to see how they match up in the West because that's different. I talk about the speed in the West. I want to see how they stack up against the best teams in the Western Conference. And what we've seen with a lot of these players in Arizona when they played over their careers is this team seemed to rise to the occasion when they played better teams. They played Colorado extremely tough. They played Edmonton extremely tough. So it's interesting to see. And then when you play teams like they have tonight, when they play Anaheim, you see them come down to their opponents. So I am concerned the travel that they had on this trip, how far they had to go to get across the country. And with the injuries on the back end, I'm curious to see what team we see show up there because in the West Coast, there are a few teams with young players. Zegras struggled, but we're going to talk about another young player in the Western Conference. Last year's top pick that's supposed to be the savior of the franchise in San Jose, Macklin Celebrini, is now out of the lineup.
Yeah, that stinks. You never like to see that. Although I hate to say this, like if you're thinking, hey, we'd like to draft high for another year, maybe it's not so bad. But you never want to see young stars out of the game immediately. San Jose obviously was excited to see him, so hopefully Macklin Celebrini can make his way back into the lineup soon. Petey, do you want to take a look at Utah's upcoming schedule? As long as we're at it, we were talking about Anaheim.
I really do. Are they playing some teams in the Western Conference? Boston's coming in, and again, I don't think Boston is the team they were a year ago. I think with Swayman back in, I think it's going to help them, but I still don't think that they are the team they were a year ago. I think Lindholm and the back end with McAvoy, I think they can move the puck up the ice extremely. It's a really good test for Utah. I don't think Ottawa, although they can score. Look out for Ottawa. I think Ottawa is going to be a lot like Utah. I think there's a lot of young skill, and they're going to surprise some people. But then when you look at the next 2 games, when you look at Colorado and LA, those are 2 big teams in the Western Conference that you can finally see where this Utah team stacks up on a week from Thursday and a week from Saturday, where they get some big tests in the Western Conference against some teams that they're going to have to beat if they want to be around the P word. Are we saying the P word yet?
Way too early for that. But after Anaheim, Boston, Ottawa, Colorado, all at home, and then they go to LA. So curious, again, it's early season, so you can see a lot of strange results, right? And if there are guys out of the lineup, it might change things too. But yeah, I'd like to see them get into the meat of the Western Conference and get a better sense of where they stack up. We don't know anything really about this team this early in the season.
Well, Craig, I want to say this. Everybody's got to get ready because we got to go get in front of the TVs. So make sure you're watching this game tonight, and we're going to come in with some more info. I don't know if people saw the breakdown I did of this goal by Barrett Hayton. I have a feeling, just giving a little tease, that we're going to see one of those. If there's a good goal tonight, I don't see any reason why we can't do one this week. So make sure you're sticking in. And make sure you're subscribing to the All Utah Hockey YouTube page so you don't miss any of the content, because honestly, as the season progresses, you're going to see more and more content from Craig and I as this season progresses. Hit that like button on this show today, please. Get Craig's written content at allcitynetwork.com. Follow Craig at Craig S. Morgan. Follow me at S. Peters Hockey. Follow the show at all_Utah Hockey on Twitter or X. Well, I was going to call it Twitter because that's just what I do.
Me too.
We talked about describing that. Craig, read your articles, and thanks everybody for tuning in. Go get your popcorn and soda and get in front of the TV to go watch this Utah team play a very exciting Anaheim team. And we'll be back next week to talk all about it. Thanks again for joining us. I'm Petey. That's Craig, and we'll see you at the rink.
We all silly like the mayor.